The illusion is me and Prince Jammy in the studio mixing dub. No such thing. It's all I mixing everything.
Ballers, I visited dub reggae legend Scientist at his studio. You're not going to believe the conversation we had. It was really informative, and it was also kind of surprising and shocking. If you have questions for Scientist, put them in the comments. I think he's going to be back on the show. And if you dig this video, click like and subscribe. It's a huge help. Scientist, man, thank you so much for letting me come to your studio and ask you a couple of questions. This is incredible.
Welcome to the studio, man. Welcome.
Scientist, like, what's your music background like? Did you grow up around musicians?
No, I did not grow up around musician. It's an inborn thing.
So were your parents like, stop that nonsense, and you were like, no, I have to mix music?
Yes. I was actually the disappointment of the family. They wanted me to be, the generic lawyer, suit and tie guy, and I disappointed them.
You ended up being a scientist instead.
Yes.
Were you in Jamaica at the time?
Yes, I was living in Jamaica at the time. I grew up in Jamaica, Kingston.
And so was like dub reggae a hot thing when you were growing up?
Yes.
And you just thought it was the coolest?
Yes. Yeah, well, in Jamaica, right, the radio stations, they mostly play American music, and the reggae had a very, very small, tiny window.
What did you do? Did you go to live events to hear music, like people spinning records?
Yeah, people would have to go to dance hall, nightclubs to hear actual roots, because some of the lyrics didn't align with high society Jamaicans.
Oh, right. Sexual lyrics and stuff like that, or what, political stuff?
Well, back in that time, right, it wasn't sexual lyrics, but like, for example, there was a song, it was banned from the radio. It was promoting too much Rasta, confronting the system. High society Jamaica didn't want to hear the boom boom music because, it was talking about the system. Bob Marley wasn't even getting a lot of airplay in Jamaica.
Because he was too political?
It was confronting the injustices.
Did you ever meet Bob Marley?
No, I never get to meet him.
Oh, that's kind of, because you guys were contemporaries, actually. I mean, you were young.
Well, he was there, but right before I started working up at the studio here is when he passed.
Man, heartbreaking.
Yeah, right after he passed is when I started working there, so I never get to meet him.
How did you start making dubs?
I was introduced to one of King Tubby's record, Roots of Dub, by my friend Michael Clark. Who is also, me and him used to do electronics together, building radio transmitters, and he turned me on to Roots of Dub. I eventually met Tubby's. I started talking to him about my wild ideas, about moving faders and the automation, all the modern stuff we have in the recording industry now, and to him I was a madman. So
right.
After being there and watched him, Pat Kelly, after watching him, because I had a background in electronics, it was like second nature to me. So he actually made me a bet because this client wanted us to work, and he didn't want to work for anybody. He was not into mixing music anymore by the time I reached here. I only seen him mix like one or two songs.
Pat Kelly.
Yeah, Pat Kelly used to engineer there.
Yeah, wasn't he a singer too?
Yeah, wonderful singer. But he was also mixing music. He mixed a bunch of songs with Bunny Lee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then me and Bunny Lee and Pat Kelly would be there at night time. So Pat Kelly would mix the A side, then I would mix the dub side. And it was a good experience working with Pat Kelly. So, but prior to that, after watching Pat Kelly and seeing him mix a few times, it was second nature to me because, I thought being a junior that I could build a mixing console like I would build an amplifier. But after being to a studio and see how it worked, yes, the theory that I had in my head was on spot, but it was not a one-man job thing like in building an amplifier. It was a bit more complex than just building an amplifier.
And this is at like Studio One, right? Which is just the...
No, that was a different type. I worked at Studio One for a short time, but what I figured out in the music industry is like a sports team. You can't be playing for Lakers and playing for 3-4 teams at the same time. You have to pick a choice. So I picked working round at King Tubby because of the electronics that was also happening there. Cox was just strictly studio. Tubby's was studio electronics. And, I admired Tubby's.
Man, King Tubby's. Was Prince Jammy coming on at the same time as you were?
Yes, but I don't want to talk about Jammy too much. I give him any highlight based on what he did.
Right, we won't go into that right now. So when you're doing a dub, are you there for the recording of the band? Would you just be there? Would you be there around for the whole time, or would you just come in after everyone was done and just mix by yourself?
No. Well, there's a misconception. At first, right, a Tubby studio was not equipped for recording. You could only record like vocals. So people used to go to Channel 1 studio, record the band, then a lot of them would come and mix at Tubby's. So I would be a mix at Tubby's. To every A side, like for example, Barrington Levy, the dub is mixed right after because it's counterproductive. Nobody just goes to the studio just to mix a dub album. The side of the vocals, then we'll mix the dub. It's counterproductive for you to come back after go through all that setup and mix the dub weeks later. It was never done like that. Later on, what I wanted was to learn how to record a live band. I started working at Channel 1. I did some of it at Studio 1, like Michigan and Smiley, Willie Williams, Amagideon. Couldn't get to do that at Tubby, so I joined Channel 1. So I would be there for the entire process at that time. Somebody would come, they would record the band, then after that we'll mix, like, again, for example, Freddie McGregor, Big Ship. Call the band Roots Radics, record Freddie McGregor, Big Ship, and then would mix both the A side and the B side in the same session, which is what makes sense.
Wow, that's interesting. I never thought about that, but yes, it does make sense, like from a production point of view.
Back in those times, when you listen to a 45, it would have the side A, which is the vocal, but when you turn it over, you would have version, which is the instrumental, and then during my time and King Tubby time, it was dub. You would have the dub cut that the DJs use in the dance hall so they can do their toasted over.
See, what I was sort of trying to get at, Scientist, was I was wondering if, like, you were doing it with a bunch of people behind you being like, whoa, and reacting to what you were doing, or if you were just kind of in your own head.
Sometimes with some of the albums, for example, the Green Sleeve, that I'm not so much of a fan of, back when we were doing those, it was, some of them were just on my time. But for the most part, Jamaica has a Channel 1 crowded session. People just walk off the street who know the musician. And by the time you know it, you have a crowded control room. Sometimes it can get confusing because you have 10 people talking while you're trying to work. A lot of times the singers was never even there or the band ever there when we're mixing, because it usually a bunch of people who just hang around the studio more than the musicians or singers. They had no part in it.
They're just hanging out because it's cool to hang out or whatever. But...
yeah, they know you. They come from around the neighborhood. Like for example, one of the guys, Peter Chemist, he first started coming to the studio with his mother to clean up the studio.
Peter Chemist and his mom would come?
Doing janitor work. But because he hang around us, all right, hey, Peter, plug in that cable right there. Peter, pick up that mic, do this, do that. And by the time you know it, he becomes an engineer.
Oh, that's cool. I love that. Was he a good engineer?
Yes, he had his success.
Not to name names of it in any way, but if you did a record and you were battling another dub mixer or dub artist, like, would you both be there at the same time, like alternating and sort of being like, whoa, now I go, now you go? Or did you just do your things separately?
I'm going to answer the most candid way, and I'm going to answer you straight, and I want these statements to be uncensored.
All right. I won't censor it.
The illusion is me and Prince Jammy in the studio mixing dub. No such thing. It's all I mixing everything. Jammies did not mix one scintilla of anything on those songs. I mixing everything, but the producers, right, because they want to create this illusion that me and him was there battling in the studio. No such thing. That's nonsense. It doesn't work
Really?
like this. Yes, and I'm going to show you why. It's fantasy.
That's crazy. So, like, this record that I have here, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Big Showdown, that's all you?
Well, don't listen to what I say. Just listen to the techniques and go back in time and listen to what he done. You don't hear anything like that. It's the same exact fingerprint, footprint, DNA written all over it. He did not mix one scintilla of anything on that track. It's all an illusion.
Wow. So those are you?
Yes, I mix a lot of things, and then to further that, a bunch of records out there that they're claiming King Tubby's, I mix it. It's not King Tubby's, and you can prove it, because here's what also makes sense. Now, that individual is a money freak, right? I have a big appetite for money. The producer have to pay me, I have to pay him. And how counterproductive it is to have two engineers there mixing, going back and forth, just to create this illusion, when the people who rent in the studio, half of the time, we're giving them free studio time. Like that album in particular, I mixed that on my own time.
Right, you did.
Yes, as I mentioned before, some of them, yes, people there, but I mixed it on my own time, because back then, a lot of people, because I was just learning, because they want to get away. So for me now to get up my experience, I used to go into the studio, because it was only I and King Tubby had a key to 80 Drumilie Avenue. A certain individual was forbidden because he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar more than one time.
Wow.
So he's caught him red-handed. And then we used to have a guy that used to hang around the studio, we'll call him CIA. When Tubby's come back the next day, Tubby would ask him, hey, CIA, when you left the studio? Oh, we didn't leave till 4 o'clock in the morning. And then when Tubby's asked a certain individual that got their hands caught in the cookie jar, he would say, oh, we left at 9 o'clock at night, when in fact they stayed there until the very next day. So King Tubby's never trust that individual.
If you dug that video, check out this interview with goth superstar David J. from Bauhaus. He loves scientists.